Hey, what is up YouTube? Kolst here. So now that we have some data and experience in this new Sunken City meta, I wanted to make a tier list of basically the rankings of all the classes based off of what I've seen so far. So the way I'm going to do this, I'm just going to go from best to worst and split into relative tiers based off of basically where I think the relative power levels are. It should stay this way until major changes happen. Changes don't tend to happen in arenas too often, but you know, if you watch this a month or two down the road, it might not be accurate anymore. But also, since we did predictions before the meta started, we're going to go over this to see exactly how well we did, which mistakes we made and didn't make. And while going through, I'm also going to talk about some of the key cards enabling each class, just so if you pick a class to know what you should be looking for. And by the way, I know every class has like a colossal minion that's overpowered, right? But we're not really thinking about legendaries there, more about the cards that you actually expect to draft more often. So with that, let's get right into it. The first class we're going to be talking about right now is the class which I think is by far and away up at the top, and that is Druid. Druid just gets an obscenely, in the draft, consistent stream of just completely broken cards, it seems like. A lot of classes we're going to be talking about here have like major consistency issues, basically everything except Druid, but Druid just gets like everything, you know. The consistency they get comes from a few key cards, you know, Scale of Onyxia, making them unkillable, Miracle Growth, making them unkillable, and also giving them a whole bunch of value simultaneously. And the surprising one a bit is Raid Negotiator, because specifically I didn't really see this coming because I didn't look closely enough before, but you know, they lost to the 10 mana legendary, but they got Wisps of the Old God, Flipper Friends, both new cards, and they still have Cenarius as well. And basically with this Raid Negotiator, you're just going for a fish for those three cards. I think there's like 20 options, so you have a pretty good shot at hitting one of the three right, and if you do, you're probably just going to win. So yeah, all of that just makes it so Druid is basically by far, in my opinion, the best class. So with that, let's move on to the number 2 class, in my opinion, which is Demon Hunter. It's funny because based off of the win rates on HS Replay, this class would actually be pretty close to Druid, but based off of my games, it's been way down here. But I think I've been unlucky missing a lot of the really important cards. But basically, with Demon Hunter, you don't expect to be able to beat like a Druid in a value game because of all the things that I mentioned for Druid. So you basically just have to, you know, be the aggressor and just kill them. And Demon Hunter does have a lot of really good ways to do that, but I think there were too many, like there's just a lot of very good tempo cards. It's hard to single a few out, but I think the most critical ones, which I just have not been able to draft for some reason in 5 attempts so far, Battle War and Vanguard, Puffer Fist, a neutral card, but because of the synergy with the hero power, very relevant here, and of course Inquisitor. I did have one Inquisitor, I believe, and I think I might have had one Puffer Fist, but you know, that's the thing, is that a lot of these classes are somewhat dependent on these cards, so even like the second best class, if you just don't get those cards, you know, might not go so well. So but anyway, I think it's justified to put Demon Hunter in the second tier. The next class we'll go over here is Paladin. So Paladin also in the same tier. Paladin always gets a lot of really good cards, and so, to some extent, a lot of times it depends on what rarity they are, and there are some very good ones here. Paladin's going to be good for the next year because of Bronze Explorer basically being in the core set, so that one's not going to leave. But this particular rotation, of course, they still have Templar Captain, huge Giga win condition as well, and 2 key cards for negating threats and also creating your own threats with Righteous Defense and Wealth Redistributor. Absolutely devastating cards if you can hit a good hit for them. Again, you're not always going to get everything you want with Paladin right now, but you know, you'll usually have enough that you'll be able to put a pretty good deck together. So the next class on this great tier we have here is Rogue. So Rogue has a whole lot of interesting things they can do right now. A lot of it involves scamming people by, you know, discovering other classes stuff, including Colossals. One key way they can do that is reconnaissance to get Gigafin. I've done this and I won a game that I had absolutely no business winning. But on top of that, they just have a whole bunch of consistent things, Blood in the Water being a very powerful new card they have, and if you can get it, Bootstrap Sunkeneer is just incredibly strong for tempo. But of course, that one isn't epic, so you won't always see it. But yeah, Rogue, there's just a lot of things Rogue can do, and you're not always going to get everything, but probably Rogue is one of the most diverse classes playstyle-wise right now. You might get like a super control deck, a scam deck, an aggro deck. It could really be anything. It's not going to have nearly as linear of a playstyle as like Demon Hunter, for example. But definitely very fun to play. And that's it for that tier. The next tier we have is this decent tier, which the first one I will put here is Shaman. So Shaman is a bit of almost a scam class. It's the only reason it's not higher. It has some really good tools, but it's just you aren't always going to get them. There's really only a couple key cards I see here. The first one being the biggest one is Wildpaw Cavern. Still, I wish Blizzard would remove this card because I hate it, but you know, it's a rare, so again, you just don't always see it. But among the new cards, the things that I knew they would be good, but I didn't realize they'd be quite as good as they seem to be, are the Piranha cards. The Piranha Poacher here and Schooling. Because of the offering bonus, you see them a lot. This one being common, this one being rare. And I mean, I had someone play, I think, 4 Schoolings against me in the top 12 cards. So that was a very interesting experience there. Again, like Shaman has some other things going for it, but it's really limited to a relatively low number of cards, and you're just not always going to get the right synergies. So, you know, Shaman is definitely decent, right? But it can be, like a lot of classes, just kind of hit or miss right now, I think. But I think fair to say a lot more consistent than the next class we're going to put here, which is Mage. So Mage has a couple key cards that seems to be a huge amount of the power of their class right now. And those cards are Arcane Overflow, a rare, Flame Strike, an epic, and Rune of the Archmage, also an epic. So you can kind of see the problem here is that these cards are rare and epic. The point is, like, yeah, you're just not going to always get them. A lot of the thing that I think the only reason Mage is even able to be up in this decent category is basically because you do have a fair number of spell discovers, like the new Nagas, and that can actually let you discover those things that you didn't draft. Otherwise, Mage would probably be much lower on the list. I mean, Mage does still have some other things going for it. They still have amulets, so, you know, there's other things. They're not entirely dependent on those cards, but you kind of need, especially if you're competing against like Druids and Demon Hunter, you need some kind of overpowered stuff to match up, really. And something like an amulet's just going to be a little too slow. And that's it for this decent category. I'm going to move on to the next category here, which is the playable category. And there's only one class remaining that I'm going to put there, and it is Warlock. So Warlock, you know, is kind of the same as it has been recently, a whole lot of clears. The difference is that there just isn't a huge explosion of compared to the other classes. They had a rather weak set, the most recent one, the Sunken City expansion, so they just, all the cards with offering bonus from the new set are not that strong, so it really kind of waters down the card quality of Warlock. And for this one, there's a whole lot of key cards, so I'm not gonna just pull up the entire stats page, but like, for example, Full Blown Evil, Infestation, Intel Customer, Spawn of Deathwing, Spammy, Demonic Assault, just all of these cards, still like Hollow Abomination, just basically everything that clears and does so absurdly tempo efficiently. But again, just most of these cards just aren't that common anymore, so you're just have a little bit less of them than you would want, so it's not gonna be too good on average, but you can still have some pretty insane Warlock decks sometimes. So that's why we put it in the playable category. And also Life Tap really helps with consistency to, even if you just have like 1 or 2 of those cards, you're more likely to find it, right? So that helps them a lot. With that, let's move on to the last category, which is the awful category. And we have 3 classes here, and I'm not going to talk about them all individually. The short answer is you really don't want to be playing them. I think I'll actually sort them in this order. But yeah, these classes, they did not have a good recent set, and if you look at the old cards they got back, they're not really good cards either. They also have the least impactful hero powers generally, so they don't have a lot going for them basically. You can still get a decent deck with, or even a great deck with these cards if you get like certain broken legendaries and stuff, but you know, the odds just aren't in your favor there. Part of the reason I brought up the stats for Warlock, I wanted to compare, like, you know, you can see like all of these like really powerful cards that Warlock happens to have, right? And now like this is Priest, and Priest, it's like there's honestly just not a lot there. There's like Elec Mount. I think Elec Mount is the one key one, but then you're just like well, there's like nothing else. Like that's it. You know, and if you look at like, this is Warrior now, so Warrior actually, the best card, the clear best card they have right now is actually the Fires of Zinashari, which basically means that you're acknowledging that your deck is going to be completely unplayable, so you just replace your entire deck with something that is probably going to be better on average, right? It's worth saying, like, Grinning actually rated this card an F because it shouldn't be that good on average, and it's probably not, but it's just better than playing Warrior, basically. I do think it's much better. It has a very high mulligan win rate, and the played win rate was like 65%, so but you have, if you play it on turn 2 specifically, so I think they underrated it there, but still, it's not the ideal card you would necessarily want to draft regardless normally, but when your deck is terrible, you might as well. And the last class here being Hunter. Hunter, I mean, they really just have nothing. I guess you have Bloodseeker, and the new weapon is cool too, wherever that thing is, but you know, there's actually just nothing. And unfortunately, I think Hunter also suffers, as well as Demon Hunter in my opinion, that the other classes like Druid and Paladin, for example, are just good at anti-aggro right now. They just have so many defensive options that Hunter just, it really just, it doesn't work right now. So that is why I put all 3 of these cards in the awful category. You just really don't want to play them. I mean, if you really like Priest, like you might get a good Priest deck, but otherwise, like I would just, especially Warrior and Hunter, I would just recommend total avoid. But with that, let's compare these results to our predictions from before this meta. So these were the predictions I have. I have them sorted. I have to say, like, we actually did a remarkably good job. If you're wondering where this came from, I did a 2-hour video where I went over like all the cards. I'll put a card up for that up here. And I kind of put together this way to kind of mathematically evaluate like how strong each of the sets were, and then adding them all up to compare the total value of all the cards to predict the best classes. And with this, I have to say it's honestly pretty remarkable how well we actually did here. If you compare like the order here, like this is almost identical. I think there were 2 main misses here. We definitely overrated Shaman and we definitely underrated Druid pretty massively. So I think the key mistakes here were that, you know, Druid, I definitely underrated their set, and I think the reason looking back was that the most recent set, the Sunken City set, and the reason was I kind of completely missed how good of a card Miracle Growth was going to be. I looked at my old card reviews and I actually just completely skipped this card, I'm pretty sure. I knew this card would be good, but I didn't realize it was going to be the best card in the class, and because the way Drew is able to play, it's just such a key enabler for that value playstyle, so. And also, I just didn't really predict, you know, just how busted Raid Negotiator would be with the new Choose 1 cards. So essentially, like, this should not be a 5, this should be like the top score. And frankly, like, because of how powerful those cards are, these 2 numbers should have been like, I should have reweighted all of these so that Druid could have been like up and above everyone else. Like, these should be like the maximum score, and no one else should really come close to them. And with Shaman, I don't know, I probably gave them too strong of a core set. I probably overvalued the core set's importance, period. And I probably gave them too many points for Hero Power 2, especially because of, you know, the new Pufferfist card, like the classes that can actually attack with their Hero Power, Rogue and Druid included. They're just, you know, way more valuable than I gave them credit for here. But otherwise, honestly, I'm pretty impressed because, like, look at this. Like, this was the exact same, outside of those 2, this was the exact same order that I have them in here. And I did not, like, you know, I didn't, like, set this up on purpose. These are mostly determined by HS replay win rates, frankly. So, like, we got the bottom 3 right. We got, you know, the order, like, Demon Hunter, Paladin, Rogue, Mage, Warlock. We got it perfect, so really happy with these results. We'll definitely do this again next time more cards come out and there's a new rotation. So I guess that is it for this video. Let me know how you guys have been enjoying the meta so far. If you guys have had any vastly different experience with these classes than what you see here or whatever, any thoughts you have on any of these classes, anything much different or whatever. But yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment on all that stuff. But yeah, as always, thanks a lot for hanging out. We'll see you guys in the next one.